This is the Viofo A229 Pro full review. Now you're going to want to watch this because I've given them a little over a month to correct any little challenges I found, and we're going to be exposing the pros, the cons of this unit. We're also going to be showing you the differences between the original A229 as compared to the A229 Pro, and the differences between the A139 Pro and the A229 Pro. We're also going to have lots of video footage comparing these two units of the A139 Pro and the A229 Pro. And I also have a little bit of Vantrue N4 Pro footage compared to these two units. Anyways, let's go. The Viofo A229 Pro is available in 3 different configurations. You can either get it in front and rear, or front, rear, and interior. Also known as 1-channel, 2-channel, or 3-channel operation. The front camera is a 4K 8 megapixel Sony Starvis 2 IMX678 image sensor. The rear camera is a 5 megapixel 2K 1440p Sony Starvis 2 IMX675 image sensor. And the interior camera is Sony Starvis, not Starvis 2, Starvis IMX 307 1080p image sensor. The viewing angle of the dash camera of the front camera is 140 degrees, the interior camera is 150 degrees, and the rear camera is 160 degrees. High dynamic range is supported on all 3 channels on this dash camera. If you look at the A139 Pro, they only have high dynamic range working on the front camera. So you're probably thinking, this camera sounds amazing. It's absolutely going to destroy everything else in the market. It does sound amazing. But guess what? I've been doing lots of testing at night, and I'm not impressed yet. There are some things that really stand out to a lot of people who are reviewing this unit or are looking at this unit. And here's what I notice. So I noticed that, like, if you're driving by late at night and you want to get a street sign, the actual A229 Pro is getting the street sign very clearly. When you look at the A139 Pro, it's not getting the street sign as clear, but it's getting the license plate a lot more clearly, right? So there's less motion blur, and it's easier to actually make out oncoming traffic. And I'm going to show you in this video here, you're going to see what I mean by that. We even had a competitor's product in our vehicle, and it picked up the license plate clearer than the A229 Pro. Now, we have given a lot of this feedback to Viofo. I imagine they're going to get this fixed, and it's going to be amazing when they get it all dialed in. I even do the tunnel test, which you're going to see a little bit later, and the A139 Pro adapts very quickly to the lighting conditions, while the A229 Pro takes up to 5 seconds to do this. Now, wait a second. Let's hold everything up here. This is very interesting, something I just found. I was actually reviewing the footage again on the tunnel test, and what really blows me away is the A229 Pro is actually picking up license plates in the tunnel, and the A139 Pro is not. That's typically one of the hardest places to pick up license plates because of all the reflections, especially when it's raining. So they got something really right here that I haven't seen any other camera work well at. So the A139 Pro basically won't pick up any of these license plates. The A229 Pro is actually picking them up where you can kind of make out them pretty good. So I had to cut in and do this because I was reviewing the footage again for another time, because usually I don't look at license plates in the tunnel because it's pretty much near impossible to get them most of the time, unless it's like a very clear day, but there's so much lighting and reflections and stuff going on there. So the A229 Pro, as much as it has that 5-second delay in terms of adapting to the various lighting conditions going into the tunnel, whatever they do with the firmware, they actually are getting license plates in the tunnel. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're adapting to various lighting conditions very quickly when we're going into the tunnel test. And that's why I do the tunnel test, because it shows the strengths and weaknesses of a camera. Now, during the day with HDR on, I think the A229 Pro is hands down the best camera I've ever used during the day. Not a chance anybody else is touching it that I've seen yet. Anyways, let's keep moving. Segueing into night vision, if you look below at the A139 Pro as compared to the A229 Pro, the A229 Pro is actually picking up license plates cleaner than the A139 Pro at night. Now, this is where the A229 Pro is a little bit better than the A139 Pro, is picking up the license plates in this nighttime setting. However, when it gets pitch black, like where you're not driving through a town, and if you're in that scenario lots, for some reason, which you probably seen at the beginning before I showed the tunnel test, the A139 Pro seems to have a higher chance of picking up those license plates than the A229 Pro. And I have some footage here and there. I'm not going to be putting them all throughout this whole video, but from what I have seen, the A229 Pro definitely seems more dominant at picking up license plates, but I have seen some negatives to it driving around at night with the A229 Pro, which as you view this video, you may see some things you like, and you may see some things that you don't like, and you might see some things where you would prefer the A139 Pro over the A229 Pro. The Viofo A229 Pro has dual band Wi-Fi that you can operate via your smartphone app. It has 2 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. When you're using the 5 gigahertz mode, it will actually download videos 3 to 4 times quicker. For the SD card capacity, it will support up to a 512 gigabyte micro SD card. We recommend using the ones that are recommended on the screen right here, which is also recommended on the Viofo website. Personally, for me, all my customers, I'm only going to be recommending a 512 gigabyte micro SD card from Viofo. I do feel it was the highest grade we have tested when we did our SD card test last year, and I'm going to continue recommending that because I want my customers to have the highest reliability. This dash camera has GPS built in. What that means is it will actually embed speed and location data directly into the video. So if you're driving 55 kilometers an hour down the road, it will actually show how fast you are going and embed that directly into the video. Now, if you don't want that to be embedded in the video, because maybe you have a heavy foot and you don't like, driving the same speed limit, you can also turn that off. That way it doesn't embed that speed into the video. So this is a video of us entering back into Canada, and as we get up to the customs booth, you're going to hear the back and forth conversation, and we're going to switch between the microphone of the A229 Pro and the A139 Pro so you can hear the difference in quality. Enjoy.
Hey, mission. Three hours, I think. Just got some groceries. I went to Discount Grocery Outlet, Costco, Winco, Walmart. It's under $100, I know that. No, I don't do any of that. I'd have to add them all up. Thanks.
Firmware updates. Now, this is actually quite great. I think it's awesome because personally, when you're doing a firmware update on the old A229 or an A139 Pro, all you see is a little red light come on. And the little red light comes on and you're supposed to just wait for about a minute until the little red light goes out, and then it reboots up again and it does it. Now, in the new A229 Pro, the operating system is a little bit different now. And when it does an update, you can see by the picture here, it actually will say firmware updating, and it actually will give you a progress bar on the LCD screen. Now, to me, I think this is pretty wicked. The other thing that's a big update on the A229 Pro is there's actually a separate firmware update for the rear camera that you can also do. So if there is any challenges in the future, they're going to continue dialing in that software. And we've seen how the A139 Pro last year, or the beginning of this year technically, actually had a whole bunch of little firmware updates that were actually done to it to just continue bettering the resolution. Well, maybe not the resolution, but the overall image quality. Viofo A229 Pro parking mode. We actually put this dash camera through the paces. We test time lapse in 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10 frames per second. We also test low bitrate recording and auto event detection. We also test impacts on the vehicle in all three of these modes to see how the dash camera reacts, and you'll be able to see full 360-degree viewing as we have the front, rear, and interior camera fully working through all of this. Anyways, let's go. So we're going to start off here with time-lapse parking mode, and as you can see, we're at 1 frame per second, and the main difference between anywhere from 1 to 10 frames per second. So let's take a look at this here. If you're doing a normal video recording with your phone, or with most video recording devices, they're recording at 30 frames per second, which means it's taking 30 pictures per second. And as we go through the time lapse, when it's taking 1 picture per second, that means it's using 1/30th of the room. And when we go as far as 10 frames per second, we're using 10 out of 30, which is 1/3 of the space. So which basically means that at 1 frame per second, you can get about 30 hours of video length as compared to the normal 1 that you would get on that in time-lapse mode. So keep that in mind when using that in parking mode. So now we're going to move over into low bitrate recording. And low bitrate recording, as you can see, we now get audio. It's now getting recording audio. It's going to take about 1/3 of the space of a normal auto event detection or motion detection recording. So if it would normally take up, I don't know, 1 gigabyte of space, this is going to take up about 1/3 of that for your video file recording. And it's still going to record at 30 frames per second in the low bit rate recording mode, which is actually very good. Now when we get into auto event detection is motion detection. And this is going to record at 30 frames per second as well. Now the main difference is when it's in parking mode, it's only recording at 1440p. So it's actually not recording in the normal 4K resolution out of the front camera. Some people may expect that, but on the Viofo units in auto event detection, they roll back from 4K down to a 2K or 1440p resolution out of the front camera.
Parking recording started.
So this is auto event detection impact test number 1. So we're going to come out of the vehicle and you're going to see us throw the basketball at the windshield. You're going to hear it say video protected. But the video protected dash camera is the A139 Pro speaking. It's actually not the A229 Pro. So now we're going to do a test number 2. And yet again, auto event detection. Throw the basketball directly at it.
Video protected.
Boom. A139 Pro is saying video protected again. So that's test number 2 with impact. And you can see the basketball is making it, so we threw it again because we're like, wow, it only said it once again.
Video protected.
Test number 3. We threw that right at the A229 Pro just to make sure, because we're wondering, is the G sensor wrong? Something going on with it? It's not picking up impacts and saving it like the A139 Pro.
Started.
Now the low bitrate impact test.
Wi-Fi disabled.
And we're going to hit it.
Recording. 3 channels started. Video protected. Video protected.
Twice. So we heard it twice. The A139 Pro and the A229 Pro both saved it. So now the time-lapse recording, you won't hear any audio right now. We throw it, the A139 Pro yet again locks the video. And on time-lapse, the Viofo on the A229 Pro did not save the video at all. The firmware that was used to actually test this video is version 1.0_230928, which is the current most up-to-date version on Viofo's website under support. So I know I had a few people kind of say to me that I was completely wrong, and the unit was shipped with, I believe it was 1.0_230914. Now, if you have that one, my understanding is the auto event detection and Timelapse is locking the parking recordings. However, this is the newest, most up-to-date version. Viofo did send me a more up-to-date version, which isn't publicly available yet, and I did test it on my bench today. Today is Friday, November 3rd, and I had no issues with auto event detection and time-lapse locking recordings. So hopefully they make that one available sometime soon to the general public. Otherwise, if you don't have access to that, I would recommend having low bitrate recording on for parking recording at this time. I'm assuming there's going to be further tests going on, and it's going to be sent to other people other than myself who test and review products, just to make sure that there isn't any other tweaks or anything else that come up as regards to it. So if you want to enable parking mode, you need to purchase the Viofo HK4 hardwire cable. This allows you to actually hook it up to record while parked, which is what we just showed you here. If you don't have this, it's not going to record while parked because you don't have the capability. This does not come inside the box of the Viofo A229 Pro. This is an additional accessory. So anyways, let's move on to current draw. So we tested current draw while in continuous recording, which is while you're driving. And when we look at one channel, which is front only, it was 359 milliamps or 4.4 watts. Two channel mode was 478 milliamps or 5.9 watts. And three channel mode was 628 milliamps or 7.8 watts. We then tested auto event detection. And auto event detection in one channel mode was 242 milliamps or 3 watts. We had two channel mode was 393 milliamps or 4.9 watts. Three channel mode was 532 milliamps or 6.6 watts. And time lapse, one channel 226 milliamps or 2.8 watts. Two channel mode was 373 milliamps or 4.6 watts. Three channel mode was 472 milliamps or 5.9 watts. Low bitrate recording, one channel 241 milliamps or 3 watts. Two channel was 369 milliamps or 4.6 watts. And three channel mode was 464 milliamps or 5.8 watts. You might be wondering what this means, and this is the amount of current draw that is on your vehicle. So when we're looking at everything, people may want to figure out how long, for instance, a battery pack is going to last. And they may be wondering, hey, if I get a battery pack and I wanted to record for a certain period of time, is it going to cover me for that? And if you are looking for that information, I would recommend looking up here. We do have our battery pack video where we do have an equation in there which will help you in figuring out what kind of time frame you can get for recording while parked. And you can use some of this information here to figure out whether you get 1, 2, or 3 channel and what parking mode option you select. So we're going to compare the Viofo A229 original to the Viofo A229 Pro. So as we can see here, both these units have the Wi-Fi button, microphone button, emergency recording button, record button, and the option button. So nothing different here. The screens are the same size. It cosmetically looks the same. Now we're going to turn it sideways. And as you can see here, the original A229 supported an external microphone. So if you wanted better audio quality, it had that input right here. The A229 Pro has added an interior camera input. So this actually allows you to add an interior camera, allowing it to now have 3-channel capability, while the A229, the original, did not have any capability for it. They both have the micro SD card port here. And as you can see, the original A229, that is where the rear camera input is right there. There is no rear camera input here, right there. Now we're going to turn it over to the other side. And as you can see here,
This is the rear camera input on the A229 Pro. This is the USB input. This is where you would actually power the original A229. So now if we look at the top, which is the GPS antenna mounts on the back side of the unit. The A229 Pro, this is where you actually power it. While on the original A229, you can also power it here from the GPS antenna. So you have the option on the original A229 to power it here or power it right there. So those are some of the differences. Now, when we look at it from this side, they both look the same, minus there's no 3M tape on the A229 Pro as it was originally mounted in the vehicle. But both of them, if you slide off, you can see here. Now, if you have an original A229 and you think you're just going to take an A229 Pro and slide it onto the GPS mount, you'll be sadly mistaken. It will not be supported. I believe Chuck at Panzer Platform actually did test this and find out that it will not support being plugged into the GPS dongle. So you need to make sure that you remount with that. Now, the power cord and hardwire cable is exactly the same. It is still using an HK4. No need for a newer revision or anything like that. That is still fully supported. So those are the major differences between the original A229 and the A229 Pro. Another big difference between the A229 and the A229 Pro is basically its user interface. So as you can see here, it actually separates it into three different things. So it separates on the A229 Pro into video settings, system settings, and file list, while the A229 goes by the old school way that all the other Viofos are known for, which all the options are available when you go through the menu. So this is one of the new things that they've done with the Viofo A229 Pro. And I don't want to bore you with going through every single setting in it. It does have all the settings as the prior generations. The difference is they just made it a little bit quicker in order to go in to video settings. And as you can see, it's a little bit of a bigger font as well, so it's a little bit easier to read.
This next video is the A229 Pro versus the A139 Pro in 3-channel mode. It's about 3 minutes long. I know it's a long video, but you'll be able to see how the front cameras compare to each other, as well as the interior cameras and the rear camera. We also show picking up license plates with the front camera, the rear camera, and the interior camera. There are some quite little small noticeable differences. One thing for sure to point out is that the interior camera of the A139 Pro, when seeing like the black seat belts and stuff like that, there is a little bit of a purplish hue on it, while the A229 Pro, the seat belts look its normal color of black. So pay attention to those details, as well as when it's going right down the bridge, you'll see, pay attention to little things. You're going to see how it's a lot smoother on the A229 Pro, while the A139 Pro looks a little blurred, right? Which is also partially probably because of the 30 frames per second. But they are using a different Sony Starvis image sensor for the IMX307 for the interior sensor. Anyways, enjoy the video. promised you that there would be Vantrue N4 Pro footage versus the Viofo A229 Pro. So here it is, the tunnel test with Viofo and Vantrue. Enjoy. The Viofo A229 Pro also has voice control. It has the following commands: take photo, turn on audio, turn on screen, turn on Wi-Fi, show front camera, show both cameras, video start, turn off audio, turn off screen, turn off Wi-Fi, show rear camera, lock the video. So A139 Pro and A229 Pro, what are the main key differences? Well, a couple different things. One thing's for sure, when running both these dash cameras in 3-channel mode, the A229 Pro definitely prevails as being the better video quality because it will record all 3 channels at 30 frames per second. The A139 Pro will default back down to 24 frames per second. So that is definitely one of the downfalls of the A139 Pro. Now, the other thing is, if you are running these in 2-channel mode, the A139 Pro can drop down to 2K 60 frames per second, while the A229 Pro does not have the capability to record at 60 frames per second at all. So if you are somebody who likes to have that smoother video recording quality, the A229 Pro is not going to have that capability of going to 60 FPS at 2K. Keep in mind you have to have HDR turned off in order to do that. And I believe that Viofo believes most people are going to be running HDR all the time, which is honestly how I like running my cameras. So really, it would be a non-issue on the A229 Pro anyways. So on to some other differences here. So when we actually look at the A139 Pro, at the top here, we actually have the microphone input. So if you wanted to run an external microphone in, this actually has that output. And then it has an AV out as well. Now the AV out's not really used much anyways, but still, if you are somebody who's looking for that feature, keep in mind the A229 Pro is not going to do that. So the A229 Pro removed their external microphone input recently when they did the upgrade, but they allowed you to now have 3 camera capability, which they didn't have on the prior generation of this model. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I mean, basically you're also gaining a Starvis 2 rear camera on the A229 Pro. So that's kind of like the big differences between these two units. Other than that, I got to make sure not to forget this. The cables are different sizes. And as you can tell, the A139 Pro is a lot smaller. So if you're do-it-yourselfer, you're going to find it a little bit easier to probably use to run an A139 Pro cable as compared to the A229 Pro cable. The A229 Pro, like I said earlier, has gone to USB-C, and the A139 Pro is still using like their digital coax cable, if you want to call it that. Anyways, that's one of the other major differences. Just need to make sure to add that snippet in. They're both solid units. The A139 Pro's been out about 10-11 months, and I feel that the firmware is pretty solid now. When it first came out, the first couple months, there was some hiccups and everything like that, but I believe with all the firmware updates that came out, it became very solid, and I think the A229 Pro is going to go through probably another month or so, probably of little hiccups of firmware updates that's going to further solidify the video quality of this unit. Anyways, let's continue on. Well, let's take a look at the Viofo A229 Pro app. And as we can see, you can change the video resolution right here. You can change your loop recording from 1, 2, 3, 5 or 10-minute recording. You can turn audio recording on or off. Your exposure value you can change for front, rear, and interior. You can turn your HDR on, off, or set an auto time of when you want the HDR to be on. You can change your G sensor for impact while you're driving for low, medium, or high. You can turn your date stamp on or off. Bit rate, you can go all the way from low to maximum. You change your time zone and then synchronize your time with your time zone. Your date format, you can change day, month, year, day, year, month, day, all that kind of fun stuff that people like to do. You can have a boot delay. You can also change your LED status in normal recording. So you can have it so that not all your LEDs are on, because some people find that distracting, so you can actually turn that on or off. You can also have the LED status in parking mode. Some people choose to have them all off so that it looks really stealth and then people don't know that the dash camera is on. You also have parking mode, which we've gone through earlier in the video here. And as you can see, time lapse 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, low bit rate, and auto event detection. Okay. And then we have parking recording timer, 30 minutes, but we can set that all the way from off to 48 hours. Keep in mind, if you're doing probably anything over 3 hours, you're probably going to need a battery pack of some kind to support the amount of current draw that this dash camera is going to be drawing. Your parking G sensor, you can change the sensitivity there. And then there's little things where if you want to rotate the image, some people like to swap certain things, or they have the camera position into place. If you want the voice control on or off, you can turn that off there. Here's a list of the voice commands. And then you change how the live video source is. If it shows all the cameras, front, interior, rear camera. You can change what displays on the LCD screen. The GPS, if you want the GPS to actually embed speed and location data. And in here you can actually turn it speed coordinates, speed and or coordinates only, or you can have it off. That way it doesn't display. Some people have a heavy foot and they don't want that information showing. And if you're, someone from the United States, you might want to choose miles per hour instead of kilometers per hour, like us Canadians. And then you can set how long the screensaver stays on. If you don't want the camera model stamp, you can turn that off. If you don't want the logo stamp in the top left corner, you can also turn that on or off. It gives you all that capability. And then the Wi-Fi password default is, as you can see there, you can go in and change that to something different if you'd like. You can also change the name of the Wi-Fi name of the dash camera. So quite a bit of selection and changes that you can do through the app. Anyways, hopefully you learned something here. Let's keep going. I hope you enjoyed our Viofo A229 Pro full review. Hopefully you like the new hat. And anyways, if you haven't heard yet, we're now open in Toronto, and we always were open in Greater Vancouver as well. So if you are looking to support us, feel free to check us out, safedrivesolutions.com. We have tons of dash cameras available. We haven't even gotten the A229 Pro and A229 Plus on the website yet, which is quite hilarious. We've just been too busy trying to make videos and going to the SEMA show. And last week we got to meet, I got to meet Vortex Radar Ariel there, which was awesome. We had a great, probably about a half-hour discussion just talking about the Dashcam business, and I got to talk to all the different manufacturers at the SEMA show. We talked to iRoad, we talked to Thinkware, ViewRoid, FineView, Blackview, Vantrue. Trying to think if there was someone else that I'm missing here. But we talked to a lot of the different dashcam brands, and Vugera as well. So we talked to all these different brands, just talking about what's going on, seeing if they wanted to send us any products for us to review and compare to some of the dash cameras that we carry on the channel. So we'll see. We've opened up the door to some of these manufacturers to send us products to review. I'm excited if they do end up taking us up on it. There was some pretty cool products. Some new 4K Starvis 2 products that I've seen from some other companies. Would love to have that for another Ultimate 4K Dashcam comparison. We'll see. Ball's in their court. Anyways, thanks again for watching. This was a lot of work, especially with being sick and going to the SEMA show and trying to compile all this information. But thanks again, and we are working on another. We're going to try and put out another Ultimate 4K Dashcam comparison video, because a lot of people are asking how the A229 Pro does to all the other 4K dash cameras. So let's see what happens. Cheers.